Is this the way you saw yourself living? When you pictured your life, is this the way you pictured it?
Well, my life was centred around keeping my kids safe, basically, and keeping a roof over our heads, and that was it. All of my desires and dreams, I think, fell by the wayside. And in the end, the whole house became a tension of what's going to happen next. And even when you were feeling peaceful, you kind of, you felt yourself lulled into a false sense of security, and then it would all happen again. Hi there, welcome to the Bottled Up podcast for families. I'm Lou.
And I'm John, and today we're going to talk about the second strategy for change, which is S.H.A.R.E.
Like the last episode called Love, S.H.A.R.E is also an acronym, and it's designed to give you options to help initiate change and make you more empowered.
Okay, S.H.A.R.E stands for safety, health, ambition, relationships, and environment.
Okay, John, why do we need S.H.A.R.E?
Yeah, good question. I mean, people would just say, well, I know what the problem is, they drink too much and that's it, end of story. Yeah, which is fine. That is true. But the problem there is the definition of drinks too much. Your definition of drinks too much as a family member is probably an awful lot different from my drinks too much as a drinker.
Yeah.
Because I know all these people down the pub that drink far more than I ever did.
Yeah.
So it gets into a bit of a pantomime. You drink too much. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, yes, I do. And it goes back and forward. Whereas if you start to break it down, the consequences of change, then you can start and talk about consequences.
Just to do an overview then. So we talked about strategy for change 1 is kind of reframing the dance.
Yes.
But deep inside, everybody wants the dance to end in a particular place.
Yes.
And that is to try and get their drinker to stop drinking. So is this part of an intervention?
It can be used as part of an intervention, yes, and it's an integral part of the intervention.
Okay.
But it depends, again, what you mean by an intervention. In some respects, an intervention can be, let's change the consequences of change, or it can be used to try and get your drinker to stop drinking altogether.
Okay, we're going to do a podcast on that, aren't we? Yeah.
So for some people, it'll be about the harm reduction. If they're not going to stop drinking, well, let's at least reduce some of the harm. But in order to do that, you need to know what the harm is, what these consequences are, what are the things that drive you nuts.
Okay, all right then. So
it's not about pointing, you're drinking too much, but your drinking is causing X, Y, and Z.
Okay, so you're coming up with facts now rather than feelings.
Facts, yes.
Okay. Right, so what's the first one then?
Okay, the first one is safety. I mean,
Again,
we're kind of labouring on safety, and it might sound as if that's all we ever talk about, but I think it's extremely important, But safety is quite a big issue. It's not just, that. I mean, you might say, well, my drinker is actually a very nice person and they don't harm me, they're not violent, they're not aggressive. But that doesn't mean to say that, there are not safety issues.
Okay, so explain that a bit more.
Okay, well, one of the things that I did when I was a drinker was I smoked. And I very often fell asleep with a cigarette in my hand, and all around me was, and the carpet were carpet burns.
That was one of the terrors of my life with my drinker.
Fortunately, we didn't have an inflammable carpet. In Scotland, one of the offences could be drunk in charge of a chip pan.
Yeah, that's another one.
Cooking while under the influence. And that could end up in some really difficult.
So do we make a list of these if you're working with the client to do that? Would you send them a way to write down the things that are going on?
Yes,
okay.
I would. If you go into Bottled Up, what you'll find is you'll find a workbook for this.
Okay. Yeah.
It'll go through the reasons for S.H.A.R.E. It'll tell you what each one means, a wee discussion about it, and there's also like prompts for change. So I'll actually, it's a kind of aid memoir where you can look at this and say, okay, under this particular heading, you've got aggression, violence, under this one, childcare under the influence, which you mentioned, driving while under the influence, big one.
Yeah.
Cooking while under the influence, smoking while intoxicated, so there are sort of headings, and you can start to look at it.
Pretty well all of the above.
Yeah. So you can start to fill this in. Is this a problem with your drinker? But what we suggest that you do is just fill it all in to begin with, and then you go back at the end and then you score it and say, how much of a problem is this? 1 is not really that much of a problem. 10 is big problem. So what you're looking for are, what are the big problems? If you're starting to negotiate changes, not abstinence altogether, but changes, then you would look and say, well, are there some big ones we could change to begin with?
It does strike me that this is actually a very useful tool because, we're always getting minimization from our drinker, that actually what we're saying is blowing things out of proportion. Actually, this strikes me as being a really useful tool to be able to get it down in front of you in black and white. And you can think, hang on a minute, this is really happening.
Yeah, it is a useful tool. It's a very useful tool because you're not arguing about some hypothetical, level of drinking. Are you an alcoholic? No, I'm not an alcoholic. Of course I'm not an alcoholic. Yeah, don't call me an alcoholic,
Yep.
And people get very defensive about that.
They certainly do.
But if you're saying, well, you got really drunk and you were looking after wee Jamie the other day,
Yeah.
That's kind of almost indisputable.
Yes. So it's a bit of an inventory, really, isn't it, of what's happening beneath all the hyperbole.
It's not just a bit of an inventory, it is an inventory. But it's breaking down the drinking to what's the real issues here.
Okay, so I think safety, is pretty self-evident. I looked at that list and I thought, all of those happened with my husband. That's
all of them.
And that's quite forefront, I think, when you're living with a drinker.
They are actually quite common.
Yeah.
The next one is health. Health is a big one.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily talking about the drinker's health.
Yeah.
We're talking about the family's health.
Yeah.
So,
it's more subtle, isn't it, to begin with?
It is a lot more subtle. And we did talk about this in about mental health in other places. We talked about anxiety, we talked about depression. And these are very common with people who live with drinkers, high anxiety, high depression. But there are other things. I mean, my ex-wife, she wasn't a big woman to begin with, but she lost a lot of weight while I was drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was down to anxiety,
Yeah.
So it did have health consequences for her.
And living in a kind of a state of heightened anxiety and a vigilance, hypervigilance, which is very, very common when you live with particularly a binge drinker. That's really stressful for your body, really stressful. So I think then it affects things like you get tummy aches, it affects the digestive system,
Absolutely.
The nervous system,
You sleep problems.
Yeah.
With sleep problems, you can have concentration problems. And so there's quite a lot involved here. So again, these are things that you're not looking at the drinker's issues. You're looking at your issues.
Mm.
These are health issues that have been caused by the drinking.
But some of them are nuanced. I think they become more prominent as you stick in a situation, I think.
Yeah. Okay, next one's ambition. Ambition's a wee bit more difficult to define in some respects. But let me ask you one question. Is this the way you saw yourself living? When you pictured your life, is this the way you pictured it?
And the answer is no. It depends which bit you're looking at it. I mean, my husband, as I said before, took care of the singing side and didn't really drink for that bit. In terms of intimacy, though, and lovely family days out, Christmases without pain and trauma, no, not at all. I mean, you imagine everything being absolutely wonderful, particularly on high days and holidays, and often that's where the drink really cuts across family life. These are more subtle things because we lose them by degrees. don't we? Bit by bit, we realise we're putting down some of the things.
Some of them are subtle, some of them less so. I mean, if you have a drinker who is drinking a lot and spending a lot of money, then it affects lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is this where you saw yourself living? Is this the house that you wanted? Is this the neighbourhood that you wanted to live in? Has this affected the kids? Yeah. Has it affected them? Has it affected the schools that they go to? Has it affected their chances in life, etc., etc.? Again, slightly subtle, but at the same time, there can be a direct link to it.
And I think if you begin to look at your life, you'll find that many of the things that you hoped for, and we'll look at that in the next one, which is R for relationships, become less and less evident. In the end, you kind of, my life was centered around keeping my kids safe, basically, and keeping a roof over our heads. And that was it, you know. All of my desires and dreams, I think, fell by the wayside, which is very sad. Do you remember? I remember a time, because, you know, my whole life was built around keeping everybody happy, keeping everybody safe, and stopping things from erupting, you know. And I know you said that the first time you asked me what I wanted to do, it was as if I was looking at a horizon far, far away, because it was so long since I'd actually had the space to think, what do you want?
Yeah.
I mean, you've created a monster now, but, you know, just trying to identify.
Can I go back and not say that?
Trying to identify my desires and dreams. I'd buried them so far down.
Yeah, it was as if I was speaking to you in Klingon. You just looked at me and went, as if nobody's ever asked me that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I say, too, that I'm very aware that doing this particular podcast is going to bring some grief. I think inevitably you're looking at your losses. Now, we're doing it for a reason. This is because you want to take us somewhere, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that.
You're not just doing this for entertainment's sake, because it's not very entertaining.
To say the least.
You're doing it because it gives you options. And I'll talk about the options at the end here. But what you're really doing, as you said, an inventory. You're doing an inventory of the issues.
Yeah.
But that inventory is, as I say, it has a purpose. That purpose is to speak to your drinker.
Yeah.
There are two ways to actually do that.
And it may be you end up speaking to yourself. Because I think if you begin to put these things down and look at what's actually happening, it will be painful, but maybe it will be a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't go on like this anymore. Now, we're heading towards the podcast intervention, which is a very important one. And in a way, this leads you by the hand. Yeah. Our program, we do stop doing the things that don't work, start doing things that do work. And now we're kind of looking at how we can actually address the problem itself, but in a helpful way.
I mean, there are lots of stuff here that you might not actually think about. Like, your ambitions may involve money, possessions, bigger house, clothes, etc. Jobs can be lost through poor performance, absenteeism, disruptive behaviour.
Yeah.
Even if you've got a regular income, it can be frittered away in alcohol, and it can be a considerable amount of money to sustain heavy drinking. So lots of say. And it takes time and energy to sustain heavy drinking. So the dreams of starting a business, participating in a project, studying a course, etc., etc. All of these can be lost. But you don't immediately think of them.
No.
You know, and that's why we put this down.
No, because you're too busy firefighting. Safety is kind of easy to get your head around, in health.
Absolutely.
But then when you get, these are the slightly more subtle things that we're starting to get your head around. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the next one then, which is R for relationships. This is a biggie, isn't it?
It is a big one, yes. Relationships are, well, there's the obvious relationship. There's a relationship between the drinker and their partner.
Yeah.
That's an obvious relationship. And that can be fractured in many, many ways. So one of the sad things that people often say to me is that the drinker's okay. They're not violent. They're not angry. They're just not very much of anything. And they just sit on the couch and they're not there.
Yeah.
They're just not there. So that relationship, that intimacy, that companionship is just gone. It's gone. Some people talk about the sexual intimacy is gone because obviously alcohol can affect sexual intimacy.
On both sides.
On both sides, yeah. I remember my ex-wife and I went to a marriage guidance counsellor, and the marriage guidance counsellor said, sitting there and said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "It's her. She's frigid." And she turned around and said, "Who wants to sleep with a beer barrel? It just reeks of booze all the time." And I thought, that's not very nice. You know? And that was what happened with us. You know, we just got further and further and further apart. You know? Obviously, the relationship with the kids, but there's the relationship with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
The relationship with the friends.
Yeah. I was going to say, as a wife of a drinker, my social orbit became smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. The worse my partner drank, the smaller our circle of friends became.
Absolutely. You don't want to invite people to your home.
No, that's true.
Because it's a bit of a lottery. Are they going to be drunk? Are they going to be sober? We don't know. Are they going to be sober but argumentative because they're dying for a drink?
Yeah.
You just don't know what's going to happen. And are you going to be invited to other people's houses? And the answer to that might be yes, but you don't go.
Yeah. Or yes, you go once, but you don't get invited again.
Yeah. Or you just stop going because you're too embarrassed. You know, and you become a recluse yourself.
Yeah.
You might be invited on your own, but you won't go because you want your drinker to go with you. So there are all sorts of things can happen. So yes, your social circle just sort of shrinks.
And the relationship with yourself also comes under a huge amount of strain. You're either feeling bad about yourself because you're letting things go that you never thought you'd be the person that would.
Yeah.
Feeling guilty and ashamed, or you're not talking to yourself because you don't look at what's happening.
Yeah.
And denial feels like a better option than reality. So all of this, so your relationship with yourself begins to fold and close down.
Yeah. And the last one is the environment. Where you're living and how you're living, has that been affected by the drinking as well? You know, are you living in a bit of a tip?
I think for us, two things, the kind of thing, like, it's hard to say it about him really, but he was inclined to piddle in the wrong places, you know, so the place was quite hard to get that out of the sofa and the chairs. So that was really difficult. And upkeep, you know, you spent so much energy just trying to keep your house vaguely functional that he became less and less able to do good upkeep. But the primary thing about his environment is you just felt more and more shame. And so, you know, again, I invited people in less and less and less.
And there is the fabric of the place as well. I mean, I used to get very angry and punch walls and things like that, you know, from time to time. I didn't tend to punch people, but I tended to punch walls, you know, so a hole in a wall and that sort of thing. You break things and, you know, and they never get repaired. But there's also the atmosphere in the place. Is it peaceful? Is it tranquil? Quite possibly not.
No, a lot of tension, you know. I mean, in the end, the whole house became a tension of what's going to happen next, you know, and even when you were feeling peaceful, you kind of, you know, you felt yourself lulled into a false sense of security and then it would all happen again. And that's the other thing in the environment. Often if there's drinking and then the effects of the drinking, there's a lot of hostility going on. So you don't want people to come near you because they'll hear you arguing. So yes, you had to protect your environment from being seen and judged. Basically.
And that, again, affects relationships with other people, whether you want to be in the house, etc., etc. So that's S.H.A.R.E. It's safety, health, ambition, relationships, environment. Okay. So you've written down something under most of these headings, okay? And you have now scored them because if it's a 1, if it's not really much of a problem, but you know, it's a 10 if it's a big, big problem. So you look at this and you see 3, maybe 4 ones that are a big, big problem. Now, if your drinker is not going to stop drinking, then you can say, okay, well, let's work on these ones. For example, it might be the fact that your drinker is sitting on the couch all the time, chatting away, annoying the family every time they get drunk. So one of the things you say is, okay, can you go into another room? And so you start to negotiate things that they do. And this is where some of your boundaries come from.
Yeah.
So your boundaries come from, the things that they do, not the fact that they are drinking too much, but the fact that these are the consequences of the drinking, and we want to start and reduce some of these consequences, or at least reduce the implications of the consequences for you.
Yeah. I mean, I did learn to negotiate.
Yeah.
And kind of it went a little bit like this, say, on Christmas Day. Okay, if I don't make a fuss about you drinking when the kids have gone to bed, please don't drink. So basically saying, please don't drink when they're here. You can drink like a fish when they're gone.
Yeah.
Which at least made my mother feel happy. It didn't make my wife feel. Yeah. So you're actually using this as a start to see what areas you can tackle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the important things? We'll start there. And you're doing that, but with your drinker, and saying, these are the important things. If we can do that, then...
Do you show the lift to your drinker?
You can if you want. But I would, for me, I would just show them the ones that are deemed really important. I wouldn't sort of burden them with a whole list.
Right. So you're saying I've been thinking a bit about safety and our environment. So these are the things I'd really like to do some work on.
Yeah. So I would show them the ones that are really important, the ones that decided that, that these have to change. Almost the non-negotiables.
Yeah. Now you are coming at it then more practically. So you're not coming at your drinker saying, you did this, you did that. No. You're saying, this has become a bit of an issue. Could we work on this together?
Yes.
You can actually say to your drinker, I'd like to do some work on this. What could you do? How could you help us make the environment a bit safer? Could you do this? Could you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can say, look, this is what's happening. How can we change it? And put it back in their court. If I was going to do that, I would actually have my own solution in the back of my head. Because if they don't come up with a solution, then I would have one. And here's one we prepared earlier. And I think that's a useful thing to do. So this is about setting boundaries. This is about reducing the harm associated with alcohol.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. The second way it can be used is to be used, and we'll talk about this and when we talk about the intervention.
Yeah.
You're using this as a tool for the intervention. So again, you're looking at what are the worst things here. So if you're going to do the intervention, as I say, we'll talk about this in a bit of depth. If you're going to do the intervention with your drinker, then rather than go and say, you drink too much, you go and say, well, to be honest, when you drink, this is and that's. So you would get whoever was joining you in the intervention to do a share. It might be a reduced share, a sort of cut down one because they're not living with the person all the time. But again, they would have a list of things that they want to say. So we want to be very specific. It's when you drink, this happens, that happens, this happens.
So we're really identifying the consequences of their drinking behaviour.
In a nutshell.
And they can't dispute that because you were talking about your own reality and your own life.
Well, they can dispute it, but it's much more difficult to dispute.
Yeah, because you can say, but actually this happened. So we're taking it out of this very stormy place of, exchanging of hostile and very emotive feelings and actually becoming more kind of business-like in a way, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Again, these are techniques that would be used maybe within therapy. If you wanted to change yourself, then you would make an inventory.
Yeah.
Certainly one of the things in AA is one of the steps is made a personal inventory, and then you look at that inventory and then you try to change some of it. So it's not completely out of the blue.
No.
But it is a different approach to trying to change your drinking. It's a much more productive approach.
Much more specific too,
It's
isn't it?
much more specific. Yeah.
This is a tough moment, isn't it? Because you're looking right in the eye some of the stuff that you're really not looking at to survive a lot of the time. So this is a good time to know that afterwards, maybe if you went and did something you really like, met a friend for coffee, dropped in and saw your mum. This is quite hard to do this emotionally because you're actually looking at every area that is difficult in your life, and it is going to make you sad. And it is going to be difficult, but it is an important part of coming to terms with the reality of what's going on, isn't it? But it's hard to face reality.
Yeah, it's comforting to live in a kind of false reality.
Yeah.
You know,
and this is what the drink is doing all the time. And I think that we end up doing that false reality to survive.
Yeah.
Because actually, if we looked on a day-to-day basis at exactly what is happening, we would find that emotionally really crippling.
Yeah.
However, the consequences of that denial is that, well, first of all, that our health begins to suffer. But actually, we're almost selling ourselves false. We're selling ourselves a lie. It's hard to really put into words, but we're just becoming more and more adrift with the reality of what's happening.
Well, the thing is, I mean, people are doing this all the time. All the time. You're doing it all the time. This is formalising it.
Yeah.
You're making a list in your head.
Yeah.
You're just asking you to make a list on paper and systematise it, rather than just, wander about, oh, do you know what he did this week? Do you know what she did that? Do you know that? And,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So you're actually doing it. But it's also putting it down on a piece of paper and really looking at it and say, what's really important here? Because that's the other question you're asking. What is really important here? Because that's why you score it. Yeah, that's a nuisance, but really, in the great scheme of things, it's only a 2.
And you would say, use that phrase, pick your fights in this situation. Pick the ones that you feel that you can win. Don't pick them all. And that's quite a good way of deciding.
No. And that's why you don't say, and here is the inventory, because it's overwhelming.
So
this is very confrontational.
Yes.
So, because you're telling them this is the problems, it's confrontational. So, be wise about it and only confront about the really important things to begin with.
As a matter of interest, I know we're going to do the intervention very soon. Do you take this to the intervention?
Yes. When you do the intervention, this is a starting point for the intervention. So you can do 2 things with it. One is the intervention of you need to stop drinking altogether or something along those lines. The other one is you're trying to create some change in your environment. You're asking them, please, there are certain things that you're doing that your drinking is really getting out of control, like being a nuisance and sitting on the couch and annoying everybody, not arriving for dinner, not doing this, not coming in from the pub, not coming in from work, but stopping off at the pub on the way home and, not arriving home till sometime later, disrupting the whole household. These are the sort of things that, you might be looking at these and saying, well, okay, maybe I can reduce the consequences of them. They won't look at the drinking per se.
This is if you do a personal intervention, not the big one, but if you don't feel they're ready for the big one, but this is a little bit of intervention that you do by yourself.
You can chip away at it. Chip away.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start to make boundaries around the drinking, sometimes the boundaries eventually become so many that it's just not worth drinking anymore.
Yeah.
So you're chipping away at it all the time.
So one step at a time.
Yes, and you're making it more likely. This is back to what we talked about the powerlessness, that you are exercising some power here by changing the environment. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, but you can gallop it. and make it thirsty. This is the making it thirsty. Changing that environment so that it becomes less comfortable for them to drink, less enjoyable for them to drink.
Is it good to do it with somebody else if you can?
But the problem is somebody else can't get inside your head. You know?
Yes, that's your life, isn't it? Your world.
You might be sitting down with your kids and getting them all to do it, but you know, I think you described it with your two kids, that their impression of their father was so different. They were kind of poles apart in what they felt about their father. So if you sat down with somebody else, some things that might annoy you, I could care less about, and vice versa.
So what are the takeaways then from this?
The first and the most obvious one is it allows a more convincing argument that drink is a problem. If you drink too much, oh no, I don't know. It's all down to be subjective. And trust me, the drinker's subjective sort of view of their drinking is a lot different from yours.
Yeah.
I'm all right. See them went down the pub. There I got a problem. If we can define the problem in behavioural terms, then maybe we can start to alter it. And that's the boundaries.
Yeah.
You know, that's putting boundaries down.
And then I suppose it provides more options for change.
Yeah.
And obviously then becomes more empowering.
Well, it gives you a feeling that you're actually doing something about it. So it's not just about change, it's about how you feel yourself, that you've actually got some control.
So if you do it, there'll be some sadness at the end of it, but we hope also some illumination, some practical ways forward, a kind of a pivotal moment, if you like. I would think some people sometimes do share, and when they really look in the face of what it's costing them, make the decision to go. And maybe that's really what you need to do, and this will help you make that decision to take care of yourself.
Yeah, there is that possibility as well. It gives you a much more overview of what the drinking is like, and it's a much more granular, sort of detailed view of it, and it gives you options to change. And I think that's one of the important things. But it also gives you a feeling of empowerment.
Yeah.
And that, we can't underestimate the value of that.
Thanks for listening today, and we hope you've found the strategies and the approach we've talked about helpful. You can find the full S.H.A.R.E program on our website, www.bottled-up.com, as well as plenty of resources and advice.
And please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you like what we're doing, please leave us a good review and share with somebody else. It helps us reach as many people as possible. So join us next time, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.